I was sitting at breakfast in what I thought was a luxury spa in Barcelona when my own son handed me forged psychiatric commitment papers. I actually smiled and signed them with a flourish, thinking it was just routine paperwork. 2 hours later, I was locked inside a foreign mental institution. But Brandon forgot one crucial detail about his dear old mother. I didn't survive 30 years of marriage to his manipulative father without learning a few tricks of my own. Comment your city below and subscribe to stay connected because it's time to dive into the story. Let me back up and tell you how a perfectly planned mother-son bonding trip turned into the most expensive mistake my children ever made 3 weeks ago. I was just Margaret Harrison, a recent widow sitting in my Phoenix living room, wondering what to do with the rest of my life. Then Brandon showed up with his wife, Amber, all smiles and concern, talking about how I needed a change of scenery after Dad's funeral. How thoughtful of them to plan an all-expenses-paid trip to Spain. I should have known something was off the moment Amber actually volunteered to help me pack. "Mom, you're going to love this place," Brandon said, squeezing my hand as our taxi pulled up to what looked suspiciously like a medical facility disguised as a resort. The Serenity Wellness Center specializes in helping people your age transition to their next life chapter. At 62, my own children had apparently decided my story was nearly finished. The irony wasn't lost on me that they thought I needed help transitioning when they were the ones about to need all the help they could get. The building itself was gorgeous. White stone walls, manicured gardens, a fountain courtyard. Very expensive. Very convincing. The kind of place designed to make someone feel safe and cared for right up until the moment they realized they'd been tricked. "Mrs. Harrison, welcome," said Dr. Martinez, a thin man in an expensive suit who appeared the second we stepped inside. "We've been expecting you." Of course they had. Brandon had probably been planning this since the moment Dad's will was read and he found out I had inherited everything to $0.3 million, the house and the life insurance. Quite a motivator for sudden filial devotion. "The grounds are beautiful," I told Dr. Martinez. "Because what else does one say while being led like a lamb to slaughter?" "How long has this facility been operating?" "Oh, we've been helping families like yours for many years," he replied smoothly. "Transitions can be difficult, but we make them as comfortable as possible." Amber linked her arm through mine, playing the devoted daughter-in-law. "We researched dozens of places, Mom." Margaret, she corrected herself. "This one has the best reputation for people dealing with adjustments. I was growing to hate that word almost as much as I was growing to hate them. They showed me to a spacious room with a beautiful garden view. Amber helped me unpack while Brandon murmured in the hallway with Dr. Martinez. The walls were thin enough that I caught pieces of the conversation. "The paperwork is all in order. American consulate. Temporary guardianship. Medical necessity. For a woman who had just buried her husband but was otherwise perfectly healthy. My blood pressure was rising, but my face stayed calm and pleasant. "Let them think their plan was working. Mom, we hate to leave you here alone," Brandon said when they came back into the room. "Amber and I have business in Madrid. We'll be back in a few days to check on you. Take your time," I said sweetly. "I'm sure I'll be just fine here." Oh, I was going to be more than fine. I was going to be spectacular, but first, I needed to figure out exactly what game they were playing and how deep this betrayal really went. As their taxi disappeared down the tree-lined drive, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, pure, focused anger. And it felt wonderful. That evening at dinner, I started chatting with other guests. What I learned made my blood run cold. This wasn't a wellness center. It was a private psychiatric facility that specialized in difficult family situations. Half the people here had been committed by relatives who stood to inherit from them. The other half were genuinely ill and had no idea what was happening around them. "How long have you been here?" I asked Elena, a woman about my age with a soft accent. 8 months, she said sadly. "My daughter claims I need treatment for dementia, but I remember everything perfectly. I just can't prove it because they control all communication with the outside world." 8 months. My stomach twisted. Was that what my children had planned for me? But alongside the fear came something stronger, determination. Whatever papers I'd signed, whatever lies they'd told about my mental state, I was getting out of here. And when I did, they were going to learn just how lucid their mother actually was. The next morning brought my first real taste of what Brandon and Amber had arranged. Dr. Martinez appeared at my door at exactly 7 a.m., smiling brightly with a clipboard full of documents. "Mrs. Harrison, we need to complete your intake evaluation today," he said cheerfully. "Just some standard paperwork to ensure we provide the best possible care." I glanced at the stack of forms: commitment paperwork, authorization forms, treatment consent, financial power of attorney transfer. My son hadn't just had me institutionalized, he'd been setting himself up to control my entire estate. While I was locked away, double quotes Dr. Martinez, I said, putting on my most fragile, confused expression. I'm afraid my reading glasses are broken. Could you tell me what these papers say? I trust you completely. His smile softened into something patronizing. Of course, Mrs. Harrison, these are simply formalities. Your son explained you've had some memory issues since your husband's death. These documents allow him to handle your financial affairs while you focus on recovering memory issues, right? The only thing I seemed unable to remember was where I'd gone wrong raising a son capable of betraying me like this. I signed everything with a shaky hand, playing the part of the grieving, confused widow. But as I wrote my name, I was memorizing every detail: legal language, witness signatures, official seals. If these documents were forged, I would need proof. If they were real, I needed to understand exactly how my rights had been signed away. After the paperwork, Dr. Martinez introduced me to my treatment team, a psychiatrist who barely spoke English well enough to conduct an evaluation, a social worker who'd never met me but somehow had detailed notes about my deteriorating mental state, and a nurse who looked at me like I might snap at any moment. Mrs. Harrison has been experiencing significant cognitive decline, the psychiatrist, Dr. Vega, read from a file. According to her family, she has shown increasing paranoia, memory loss, and inability to manage daily tasks. I sat quietly while they listed my supposed symptoms. Paranoid delusions about family stealing from me, forgetting to pay bills, getting lost while driving, talking to my deceased husband, as if he were alive. Every single one was a lie, but not random lies. Specific lies. Detailed lies. The kind that could only come from someone who knew me well and had taken time to construct a believable narrative. My son had built a full, fictional version of me thorough enough to convince professionals. We'll start you on a mild sedative, Dr. Vega continued. It helps with anxiety and confusion. Many patients find it eases the transition to their new living situation. Sedatives, of course, keep the inconvenient mother quiet, calm, and compliant while the dutiful children emptied her accounts. I smiled politely, but inside my mind was racing. How long before the drugs made me actually incompetent? How fast could I get a message to someone outside? How many laws were they breaking, and could I prove it? That afternoon, during what they called therapeutic recreation time, I made my first ally. Maria Santos, a janitor who'd worked at the facility for 6 years, stopped near me as she mopped. She spoke excellent English, and I later learned she supported her daughter in Mexico with her salary. Mrs. Harrison, she said quietly, glancing around, you don't seem like the others. I looked up, meeting her eyes carefully. What do you mean? The ones whose families bring them here, she said, lowering her voice. They're usually. She made a vague gesture. Different, confused. You seem very aware of everything. Maria was taking a risk talking to me. Staff weren't supposed to question patient commitments. But something about my situation clearly bothered her, and I needed to know what she knew. Maria, I asked softly, in your experience, how often do patients leave this place? Her expression darkened. The ones with dementia? Never. The ones whose families pay for long-term care? Almost never. She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder. But you? She looked around again to make sure no one was watching. You should know, Maria whispered, that Dr. Martinez received a very large payment from your son. More than the usual fees, a large payment. So this wasn't just about getting me out of the way temporarily. It was about ensuring I stayed out of the way permanently. My children hadn't simply betrayed me. They had funded my disappearance. But they'd made one fatal error. They had completely underestimated just how sharp their target really was. By day 3, I had the facility's routine memorized and a plan forming. 8 a.m. morning medications, which I'd been hiding under my tongue and spitting out later. 10 a.m. therapy sessions, where I played increasingly confused to convince them the medication was working. 12 p.m. lunch, when most of the security guards took their break. 2 p.m. afternoon rec time, when Maria worked the second floor near the administrative offices. I'd also learned how the facility worked. The key card system was sophisticated but not impossible. Every staff member had access cards with different clearance. Dr. Martinez could go anywhere. Nurses could access patient areas and medical offices. Maintenance staff like Maria had access almost everywhere except the main administrative wing. But there was one door that didn't require a key card at all. The emergency exit in the laundry room. I found it my first sleepless night while wandering the halls. The door had an alarm, but it was the kind that could be bypassed if you knew what you were doing. And after 35 years married to an engineer who loved explaining security systems in excruciating detail, I knew exactly what to do. Getting out of the building wasn't the hard part. Getting to the American consulate in Barcelona with proof of what had been done to me. That was the real challenge. I needed the commitment papers. The financial documents, evidence of the payments Brandon had made. Without proof, I'd just look like another confused elderly woman, making wild claims about her loving family. That's where Maria became invaluable. The papers you signed, she told me during our third careful conversation. Dr. Martinez keeps copies in his office, along with family correspondence, payment records, everything. How do you know that? I asked. Because I clean his office, she said simply. And because I've watched this place destroy families for 6 years. Some of us who work here, we see what really happens, and it turned out Maria wasn't alone. There was an entire quiet network of janitors, kitchen staff, and lower-level nurses who had seen too many suspicious commitments to believe they were all legitimate. But they'd never had someone with the resources and the determination to fight back. If I could get into that office, I asked carefully, would you be able to help? Maria hesitated for a long moment. Mrs. Harrison, if you're caught trying to escape, they'll move you to the secure wing. She lowered her voice. Patients in the secure wing never leave. Then I won't get caught, I said simply. That night, while the facility slept under its minimal night staffing, I put my plan into motion. The laundry room was on the ground floor, accessible through a service corridor behind the kitchen. At 2 a.m., the night shift had only 3 guards, one at the main entrance, one making rounds, one monitoring the security cameras. And the camera monitoring? That was the weak spot. The guards rotated every 4 hours. During the shift change, there was always a 15-minute window where the new guard got settled and reviewed incident. Our EPORTS ID timed it perfectly. Over 3 nights, I disabled the emergency exit alarm, using my late husband's favorite trick, a small piece of electrical tape over the magnetic contact. As long as the tape stayed put, the system read the door as closed even when it opened. Simple, effective, nearly invisible unless someone specifically went looking. Getting back inside was the real challenge, but I'd solved that too. Maria agreed to unlock a ground floor window in the recreation room at 6 a.m., just before she finished her shift. A small window partially covered by landscaping, and out of view from the main cameras. The walk to the road was longer than it looked from my window. But at 3 a.m. there were no cars, no people, and no witnesses. I'd changed into the darkest clothes. I had navy slacks and a black sweater, enough to blend into the shadows. 40 minutes later, I was standing outside a 24-hour internet cafe in the small town near the facility. My credit card still worked. Apparently, Brandon hadn't gotten around to freezing my accounts yet. Overconfident of him, he probably assumed I'd be too drugged and confused to cause any trouble for weeks. Time to prove him wrong. I spent the next 3 hours researching Spanish commitment laws, locating the nearest American consulate, and most importantly finding a lawyer in Barcelona who specialized in international legal disputes involving American citizens. That's how I found Dr. Carmen Ruiz, a woman known for taking on institutions that preyed on vulnerable patients. She'd handled several cases involving questionable psychiatric commitments. Just the person I needed. By 6 a.m., I was back in my room at the facility, pretending to sleep. When the morning medication round began, I dutifully took my pills, and just as dutifully spit them out once the nurse left. Maria found the electrical tape on the emergency exit during her rounds and quietly disposed of it. As far as anyone knew, I'd never left the building, but I'd left a trail of digital breadcrumbs that would soon land on very important desks in both Barcelona and Phoenix. My children thought they'd silenced me by locking me away. Instead, they'd given me the motivation to bring down their entire scheme. On Thursday morning, Dr. Carmen Ruiz arrived at the Serenity Wellness Center with a briefcase full of legal documents and an expression cold enough to freeze hell. I watched from my window as she parked and strode toward the entrance, like a woman on a mission, which she absolutely was. My late-night emails had worked. She'd contacted the American consulate, who demanded an immediate wellness check on an American citizen, claiming she'd been illegally committed. The Spanish authorities had questions, and Brandon and Amber were about to get the worst wake-up call of their lives. Mrs. Harrison, Dr. Martinez appeared at my door, looking distinctly uncomfortable. You have visitors. Legal visitors. I put on my best confused expression. Legal? Did I do something wrong? Doctor, I can't remember. No, Mrs. Harrison, he said quickly. These are advocates. They want to speak with you about your stay here. Perfect. Dr. Ruiz was everything I'd hoped for: sharp, methodical, and very clearly furious about what she'd discovered during her preliminary investigation. Mrs. Harrison, she said as she took a seat across from me in the visitor's room, I need to ask you some direct questions. Are you being held here against your will? I I think my son brought me here for my own good, I replied, keeping up my act while Dr. Martinez hovered nearby. I've been having some memory problems since my husband died, I see. And do you remember signing any legal documents when you arrived? Documents? Oh, yes, Dr. Martinez had me sign some papers, but I couldn't read them clearly. My glasses are broken. I added a helpless gesture that Dr. Ruiz made notes. But I saw understanding in her eyes. She knew exactly what I was doing, playing the role while giving her everything she needed. Mrs. Harrison, would you like me to help you contact your family to discuss your care? Oh, that would be wonderful. My son Brandon is in Madrid on business, I said with a warm smile. He and his wife Amber are such good children for arranging this lovely place for me. More notes. Every compliant, confused answer I gave her strengthened her case. Because the more incompetent I seemed, the more illegal my commitment became under Spanish law. After Dr. Ruiz left, things escalated quickly. By afternoon, Spanish social services arrived to conduct their own evaluation. By evening, the American consulate sent a representative to interview me. And somewhere in Madrid, my children were getting frantic emergency calls from lawyers they'd never met. But the real surprise came the next morning. Mom. Brandon's voice came through the facility phone, strained and tight. I just got a call from some Spanish lawyer. She says there are questions about your commitment papers. Oh, Brandon, sweetheart, I said, adding just the right mix of confusion and distress. I'm so sorry if I caused any trouble. I don't remember talking to any lawyers. These doctors say my memory isn't very good anymore. Mom, listen to me very carefully, he said sharply. If anyone asks you questions, tell them you're happy there and getting good care. Can you do that for me? Of course, dear, I said sweetly. But Brandon, when are you coming to visit? I miss you. We'll be there tomorrow. Just don't sign anything else, okay? And don't talk to any more lawyers without me there. After I hung up, I allowed myself a small smile. Brandon was panicking, which meant his lawyers had told him exactly how much trouble he was in. International kidnapping, false imprisonment, elder abuse, fraud. The list of potential charges was impressive, but I wasn't done yet. My children had tried to erase me from my own life. And they were about to learn that Margaret Harrison didn't erase easily. That evening, Maria brought me something that made my day complete. Photocopies of the documents from Dr. Martinez's office, payment record showing Brandon had transferred $50,000 to the facility. Correspondence discussing long-term care options for patients whose families wanted permanent placement, and most damning of all, a psychiatric evaluation that had been written before I'd even arrived at the facility. The evaluation that supposedly documented my deteriorating mental state was dated 3 days before I'd left Phoenix, which would have been impressive since I'd never been examined by any psychiatrist. Brandon had paid for forged medical documents to support my illegal commitment. He'd bribed a foreign facility to hold me indefinitely, and he'd done it all while pretending to be a loving son concerned about his mother's welfare. Tomorrow, when he and Amber arrived for their visit, they were walking into a trap. The Spanish authorities would be waiting. The American consulate would have questions, and their confused, helpless mother would suddenly become very articulate about exactly what had been done to her. But the real surprise would come later when they returned to Phoenix and discovered what I'd accomplished during my supposedly helpless weeks locked away in Spain. Brandon and Amber arrived at the facility Friday morning, looking like they hadn't slept in days. Good, I'd been sleeping beautifully, even without the sedatives they thought I'd been taking. Amazing how well you rest when you know justice is about to be served, Mrs. Harrison, Dr. Martinez said, ushering them into the visiting room where I waited. Your son and daughter-in-law are here to see you. I looked up with the expression of someone whose medication was making everything fuzzy. Brandon. Oh, sweetheart, you came back. I was so worried I'd done something wrong. The doctors keep asking me questions I can't remember the answers to. Brandon shot a sharp look at Dr. Martinez. What kind of questions? Oh, about why I'm here and who brought me and whether I want to stay. I pressed my hand to my forehead dramatically. It's all so confusing. I told them you know what's best for me. Amber squeezed my hand with fake warmth. Mom, Margaret, you haven't signed any more papers, have you? Sometimes places like this try to get patients to sign things they don't understand. I don't think so, dear. Although that nice lawyer lady did ask me to sign something yesterday. But I told her I couldn't see clearly without my glasses. The blood drained from Brandon's face. What lawyer? Before I could answer, Dr. Carmen Ruiz walked into the room accompanied by 2 Spanish officials and a representative from the American consulate. Mr. Harrison, Dr. Ruiz said crisply. I'm Carmen Ruiz, representing your mother in matters related to her commitment to this facility. We need to discuss some irregularities in the documentation you provided. Brandon stood up slowly, his lawyer instincts kicking in even as his face went pale. I'm not sure what you mean. My mother agreed to treatment here. We have all the proper paperwork. Yes, let's talk about that paperwork. Dr. Ruiz opened her briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. Specifically, the psychiatric evaluation dated 3 days before your mother left the United States. The evaluation supposedly conducted by Dr. James Morrison of Phoenix General Hospital. She looked directly at Brandon. Dr. Morrison has never heard of your mother. In fact, he was attending a medical conference in Seattle during the dates listed on this evaluation. Amber's hand tightened around mine, her nails digging in. I looked at her with wide, confused eyes. Amber, dear, you're hurting me. We also have questions about the financial arrangements. The consulate representative added. Specifically, the $50,000 payment made to this facility before your mother was admitted. That's well above standard fees for the level of care provided. Brandon was sweating now. I wanted to ensure Mom received the best possible treatment. Money wasn't an object. How thoughtful, Dr. Ruiz said dryly. And the power of attorney documents giving you control over her assets. While she's receiving this treatment, standard precautions. Mom has been showing signs of cognitive decline since Dad's death. Someone needs to manage her finances. That's when I decided it was time to drop my confused act. Actually, Brandon, I said, my voice suddenly clear and strong. Someone has been managing my finances, but it wasn't cognitive decline that necessitated it. The room went dead silent. Brandon stared at me like I'd risen from the grave. Mom. Amber whispered, I've been fully aware of everything that's been happening here. The forged medical documents, the illegal commitment. The plan to keep me locked away while you emptied my bank accounts. I smiled at them both. What you didn't count on was that your mother isn't nearly as helpless as you thought. Brandon finally found his voice. You've been faking this whole time? Oh, sweetheart, I haven't been faking anything. I really was confused. Confused about how I could have raised a son capable of this level of betrayal. Dr. Ruiz was taking notes furiously. The Spanish officials were speaking quietly into their radios, and my children were finally seeing their mother clearly for the first time in their adult lives. But here's what's really going to confuse you, I continued. While you've been congratulating yourselves on your clever scheme, I've been busy making some arrangements of my own. I pulled out my phone, the one they thought I was too confused to use properly. I had a lovely conversation with my lawyer in Phoenix yesterday. Turns out that attempting to have someone falsely committed for financial gain is considered elder abuse under Arizona law. The penalties are quite severe. Amber was crying now. Real tears, not the crocodile tears she'd used to manipulate me for years. Your house is currently being searched by investigators, I continued. Your financial records are being audited, and your attempt to access my bank accounts while I was supposedly incapacitated triggered some very interesting fraud alerts. Brandon slumped into his chair like a deflated balloon. Mom, we can explain. Oh, I'm sure you can. You're both very good at explanations. Very creative with the truth. I stood up, feeling stronger and more clear-headed than I had in years. But you know what? I don't actually want to hear your explanations anymore. I turned to Dr. Ruiz. I'd like to press charges for false imprisonment, elder abuse, fraud, and anything else you think might apply. She smiled grimly. It will be my pleasure to help you with that, Mrs. Harrison. As Brandon and Amber were led away by Spanish authorities, I realized something profound had changed. For the first time in decades, I felt truly free. Free from their manipulation, their false concern, their constant undermining of my independence. They'd tried to erase Margaret Harrison from her own life. Instead, they'd awakened someone they'd never met, a woman who was done being anyone's victim. And I was just getting started. The flight back to Phoenix gave me 8 hours to plan my next moves. Brandon and Amber were facing extradition proceedings in Spain, but that was just the appetizer. The main course would be served when I got home and discovered exactly how deep their betrayal went. My first stop wasn't home. It was the law office of Patricia Williams, the attorney I'd hired during my midnight internet research session. Patricia was everything her reputation promised: sharp, thorough, and absolutely delighted to take on a case involving international elder abuse. Mrs. Harrison, she said, reviewing the files I'd compiled, what your son did constitutes multiple federal crimes. But I have to warn you, proving financial elder abuse can be complicated when family members have legitimate access to accounts. That's what I was afraid you'd say. But Patricia, I think there's more to discover. Brandon didn't cook up this scheme overnight. This level of planning, the forged documents, the international facility arrangements. He had help. What kind of help? I pulled out a folder I'd been putting together during the flight. Brandon's wife, Amber, works for Fletcher and Associates, a financial planning firm. His best friend, Marcus, is a psychiatrist. His neighbor, Karen Wright, is a paralegal who specializes in elder law. Quite a convenient collection of professional connections. Patricia's eyebrows rose. You think this was a conspiracy? I think my son assembled a team of experts to help him steal my inheritance legally. And I think they've done this before. We spent the next 3 hours going through my financial records, looking for any suspicious activity from the past year. What we found was even worse than I'd expected: small transfers that I'd never authorized, investment changes I'd never agreed to, and most damning of all, a new life insurance policy taken out in my name 6 months ago, with Brandon as the sole beneficiary. Margaret, Patricia said quietly, this policy has a double indemnity clause for accidental death or death by natural causes in a foreign country. The room went cold. They hadn't just planned to steal my money while I was locked away in Spain. They'd been planning for me to die there. How much is the policy worth? $1.5 million. Combined with your existing assets, Brandon would have inherited over $4 million if you died in that facility. I sat back in my chair, trying to process this revelation. My own son hadn't just betrayed me, he'd been planning my murder, disguised as natural causes brought on by the stress of foreign institutionalization. But murder nonetheless. Patricia, I want to know everything. Every person who helped him, every document they forged, every law they broke. And I want them all held accountable. That's going to require a comprehensive investigation. The FBI will need to get involved given the international elements, then call them. By evening, I was sitting in my own living room for the first time in 2 weeks. But it felt like a foreign place. Everything looked the same. But knowing what had been planned here, what conversations had taken place about my future, made me feel like I was sitting in a crime scene. My phone rang. It was Detective Sarah Martinez from the Phoenix Police Department's Elder Abuse Unit. Mrs. Harrison, we've finished our preliminary search of your son's residence. You need to see what we found. 20 minutes later, I was standing in Brandon's home office, staring at evidence that made my blood run cold: a detailed timeline of my husband's final illness, research on accelerated inheritance procedures, and most chilling of all, a folder labeled contingency plans that outlined 3 different scenarios for what they called resolving the Margaret situation. Option 1 was the Spanish facility, isolate and control until natural death occurred. Option 2 was having me declared incompetent and placed in a secured care facility in the U.S. Option 3 was what they euphemistically called medical intervention during travel. Mrs. Harrison, Detective Martinez said gently, we need to discuss protection arrangements for you. If your son posted bail, he won't, I said firmly. His passport has been confiscated, and the Spanish authorities aren't releasing him until the extradition hearing. But his associates are still here, she warned, and they have just as much to lose as he does. That night, as I sat in my house under police protection, I realized exposing Brandon and Amber was just the beginning. There was an entire network of people who'd helped plan my disappearance, and they were still out there, probably planning damage control. But they'd made the same mistake my son had made. They'd underestimated Margaret Harrison, and I was about to show them exactly how costly that miscalculation would be. Omar, Dr. Marcus Webb, looked nothing like the monster I'd been expecting. Sitting across from me in the FBI interview room, he appeared to be exactly what he claimed to be: a concerned family friend who tried to help Brandon get appropriate care for his mentally declining mother. Mrs. Harrison, he said with practiced empathy, I want you to know that everything I recommended was based on Brandon's descriptions of your behavior. If he misled me about your condition, then I'm as much a victim here as you are. Special Agent Linda Cooper, leading the conspiracy investigation, made notes with a neutral expression. But I could see she wasn't buying Marcus's innocent act any more than I was. Dr. Webb, I said pleasantly, could you explain how you diagnosed my condition without ever examining me? I didn't diagnose anything. I simply provided Brandon with general information about facilities that treat age-related cognitive decline, general information that included specific recommendations for foreign institutions that specialize in long-term involuntary commitment. His composure flickered slightly. Brandon was concerned about privacy issues, he said. He felt a domestic facility might not provide the discretion your family needed. Discretion. Interesting word choice. I opened the folder Agent Cooper had given me. Dr. Webb, are you familiar with Elena Vasquez, Thomas Chen, and Dorothy Meller? I don't believe so. There are 3 other patients who were committed to foreign facilities based on your recommendations over the past 2 years. All of them had substantial inheritances. All of them died within 6 months of commitment. The room went very quiet. Marcus's lawyer, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. My client has no knowledge of any other cases beyond his consultation with Mr. Harrison. That's strange, Agent Cooper interjected. Because your phone records show 17 calls to the Serenity Wellness Center. Over the past 18 months, that's quite a lot of contact for someone who only provided general information to one family. I watched Marcus's face carefully as the walls began closing in around him. This man had helped orchestrate the deaths of at least 3 other people, and he'd nearly added me to that list. There's something else, I said, pulling out another document. The life insurance policy Brandon took out on me. The application includes a medical history that could only have come from someone with access to my actual medical records. Marcus's lawyer was furiously taking notes. Now, Mrs. Harrison, are you suggesting my client illegally accessed confidential medical information? I'm not suggesting it, I said calmly. I'm stating it as fact. Dr. Webb accessed my records through the hospital system where he has privileges, then used that information to help Brandon create a credible medical history. For the insurance application, Agent Cooper nodded. Computer forensics confirmed that Dr. Webb accessed Mrs. Harrison's medical records 14 times in the 3 months before she left for Spain. He also accessed records for Elena Vasquez, Thomas Chen, and Dorothy Miller. The room went dead silent, except for the frantic scratching of Marcus's lawyer's pen. Dr. Webb, I continued, how much did Brandon pay you for your expertise? Was it a flat fee, or did you get a percentage of the inheritance? I think this interview is over, his lawyer said quickly. Actually, it's just getting started. Agent Cooper replied. Dr. Webb, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit elder abuse, insurance fraud, and computer crimes, and those are just the federal charges. As they led Marcus away in handcuffs, I felt a grim satisfaction, one down. But the investigation was revealing more conspirators than I had originally suspected. Amber's boss at Fletcher and Associates had helped structure the financial transfers. Karen Wright had provided legal guidance on commitment procedures. And there were others, a whole network of professionals who'd turned elder abuse into a profitable side business. But the most shocking revelation came that evening, when Agent Cooper called me at home. Mrs. Harrison, we've been analyzing the financial records from all the connected cases. The money stolen from victims wasn't just divided among the conspirators. Most of it went to fund something much larger. What kind of something? A company called Golden Years Consulting. It's marketed as a service that helps families navigate care options for aging parents. But it's actually a sophisticated operation that identifies wealthy seniors, manufactures medical crises, and then profits from their institutionalization or death. I sat down heavily. How many victims are we talking about? So far, we've identified 12 definitive cases over 3 years. But we think there may be dozens more. My son hadn't just betrayed me personally. He'd been part of an enterprise that was systematically targeting and destroying elderly people across the country, people like me, who had worked their whole lives to build something for their families, only to have those families turn that love into a weapon against them. Agent Cooper, I said quietly, what can I do to help you catch all of them? Actually, Mrs. Harrison, we have a proposal for you, and it's going to require you to be braver than you've ever been before. The plan Agent Cooper outlined was audacious, dangerous, and exactly what I needed to ensure justice was served. Golden Years Consulting was holding their annual professional development retreat in 2 weeks, a gathering where they shared strategies for identifying vulnerable targets and maximizing profits from elder exploitation. We want you to attend as bait, Agent Cooper explained during our planning session. You'll pose as a wealthy recent widow looking for advice on protecting your assets from potentially greedy family members. The goal is to get them to reveal their methods on tape. So essentially, I'll be shopping for services to protect myself from people like my own son. Exactly. But Mrs. Harrison, I need you to understand the risks. If they suspect you're working with us, or if they recognize you from the news coverage of Brandon's arrest, they'll try to eliminate me permanently. I finished for her. Agent Cooper, these people planned my murder. The least I can do is help ensure they can't do it to anyone else. The retreat was being held at an exclusive resort in Scottsdale, the kind of place where wealthy retirees go to spend their golden years in comfort and security. The irony wasn't lost on me that these predators had chosen a venue designed to represent everything they were destroying. I spent a week preparing for my role. Patricia Williams helped me create a fake identity. Eleanor Blackwood, recently widowed, inheritor of a tech fortune and supposedly paranoid about her stepchildren's intentions, became my new identity. Agent Cooper's team gave me sophisticated recording equipment and a detailed backstory solid enough to survive any scrutiny. But the real preparation wasn't the gadgets or the documents. It was psychological. I had to appear like the kind of vulnerable target these people preyed on, while also staying sharp enough to avoid becoming one. It was a careful balance, seeming weak but remaining fully alert. The retreat attendees were exactly what I expected, well-dressed professionals who had figured out how to monetize human misery. Doctors, lawyers, financial planners, even funeral directors who specialized in expediting family transitions. Dr. Rebecca Chen, the retreat coordinator, greeted me warmly at registration. "Eleanor, I understand you're dealing with some family complications regarding your inheritance. My late husband's children have made it clear they think I'm too old to manage significant assets," I said, adding the perfect amount of worry to my voice. "I need to know what options I have to protect myself." "You've come to the right place," she assured me. "We specialize in helping people in situations exactly like yours." The presentations were horrifying. Workshop titles included medical documentation for expedited competency challenges, international care facility placement, and asset protection during family transitions. Every session was basically a manual on how to rob elderly people, while staying just barely within legal boundaries. During lunch, I sat with 3 other clients, wealthy widows who had all been referred by their families. What I learned from them made me sick. "My daughter brought me here," said Jonna Morrison, a 74-year-old from Tucson. "She says I need to be more realistic about my future care needs. But honestly, I feel fine." "Same here," said Patricia Wells. "My son-in-law thinks I should simplify my finances. He says he's just trying to help." These women were being set up exactly the way I'd been targeted. Their own families had delivered them straight into the jaws of this machine. That afternoon, Dr. Marcus Webb's replacement took the stage, a smooth-talking psychiatrist named Dr. James Morrison, who specialized in rapid cognitive assessments for time-sensitive family situations. "Ladies," he said, "the key to protecting yourself is recognizing when you're no longer capable of making sound decisions. Many people resist help because they don't realize their judgment has been compromised." He was literally teaching these women to distrust their own minds while evaluating them as potential victims. But the most damning session came that evening, when Dr. Chen addressed the professional attendees in what she thought was a private meeting. "Thanks to Agent Cooper's team, I listened from my room. This year's client pool shows excellent potential," she said. She reviewed profiles of the widows they'd identified. Eleanor Blackwood in particular represents a high-value opportunity: recent bereavement, substantial assets, and stepchildren already concerned about her judgment. They weren't just planning to help my fake stepchildren steal from me, they were planning to help them kill me. "The Blackwood case will require our full international package," Dr. Morrison added. "Given the asset size, we'll want to ensure complete resolution within 6 months." Complete resolution, their euphemism for murder. Sitting there in my luxury hotel room, listening to these monsters calmly plot the death of a woman who didn't even exist, I realized the truth. Taking down Brandon and his accomplices wasn't enough. Golden Years Consulting was a machine built to destroy people like me, and it had been running for years. But tomorrow, that machine would finally jam. Because Eleanor Blackwood might be vulnerable, but Margaret Harrison was about to shut their entire operation down. The next morning, the plan changed. Agent Cooper called my room at 6 a.m., his voice tight. "Mrs. Harrison, we have a problem. Brandon made bail." I shot upright. "How is that possible? He's facing extradition to Spain." His lawyer filed an emergency appeal, claiming medical necessity. Apparently Amber suffered a breakdown in Spanish custody, and Brandon convinced a judge he needed to arrange psychiatric care for her. "That's ridiculous. He can arrange care from jail." The judge disagreed. Cooper said, "He's out on a $2 million bond, electronic monitoring, passport surrendered." "But Mrs. Harrison, there's more." My stomach dropped. "What is it?" "We think he knows about the operation. Someone tipped off Golden Years Consulting about our investigation. They've moved up the timeline for the retreat. Instead of spreading activities over 3 days, they were compressing everything into a single day. And they'd added a new session specifically focused on the Eleanor Blackwood case." I got dressed quickly while Agent Cooper explained the situation. Brandon's release had triggered a panic inside the organization. They were accelerating their plans, which meant they intended to eliminate the Eleanor Blackwood threat before she could cause trouble. "We can extract you now," Agent Cooper said. "We have enough evidence to prosecute the core group, but not enough to save the other women here, Jonna, Patricia, and the others. If I leave, they'll still be targeted." "Mrs. Harrison, this isn't your responsibility." "Yes, it is. Brandon didn't just betray me personally. He became part of something that has destroyed families across the country. If I can help stop that, then everything I've been through will mean something." 2 hours later, I was sitting in what Golden Years Consulting called an individual assessment session with Dr. Morrison and financial planner David Chen. They thought they were evaluating Eleanor Blackwood's vulnerability. In reality, they were giving a full confession directly into hidden recording equipment. Eleanor, Dr. Morrison said with false warmth. We've reviewed your situation and we believe you're at significant risk from your stepchildren. They clearly see you as an obstacle to their inheritance. What kind of risk? I asked, playing scared. Legal challenges to your competency, he said smoothly. Attempts to have you declared unable to manage your own affairs. In extreme cases, they might even try to have you institutionalized. David Chen leaned forward sympathetically. The good news is, we can protect you. We have arrangements with secure facilities that cater to people in your exact situation. Secure facilities. Private care centers where I would be kept safe while they drained every penny I owned. The exact plan they'd intended for me in Spain. How would that work financially? I asked. We'd establish a series of trusts that protect your wealth from family challenges while ensuring you receive excellent care for the rest of your life. And who manages these trusts? David smiled pleasantly. Our professional team would handle all the complex details. You wouldn't need to worry about a thing. Translation, they would take everything, lock me away, and wait for me to die. Then Dr. Morrison said something that made my stomach drop. Eleanor, you should know we're already familiar with your situation through a mutual acquaintance. Brandon Harrison spoke very highly of our services. The room tilted. Brandon wasn't just a client of Golden Years Consulting. He was referring them new victims, even from jail. He was trying to have me killed. Brandon Harrison, I said, forcing my voice steady. A wonderful young man who recently helped his mother transition to appropriate care. Very forward-thinking about family financial planning. They had no idea Brandon was my son. They believed Eleanor Blackwood and Margaret Harrison were two different people, which meant Brandon had recommended me as a target for the same treatment he had already arranged in Spain. I'd love to meet Mr. Harrison, I said carefully. Could you arrange an introduction? Actually, Dr. Morrison said, checking his phone, he's here at the resort today. There are legal complications with his mother's estate, but he still wanted to support our mission despite his personal troubles. Brandon was here at the same retreat where they were planning to murder their fictional target. The audacity was unbelievable. There's one more thing, David Chen said. Given the urgency of your stepchildren's threats, we recommend immediate placement. We could have you transferred to a secure facility as early as tonight. They planned to kidnap me tonight, exactly as they had done with Jana, Patricia, and countless others. But what they didn't know was that Margaret Harrison had learned a lot about fighting back these past 3 weeks. And tonight, instead of becoming their victim, I was going to become their worst nightmare. That sounds perfect, I said with a relieved smile. I can't tell you how grateful I am to have found people who really understand what I'm going through. Dr. Morrison and David exchanged satisfied looks. In their minds, Eleanor Blackwood had just agreed to hand over her fortune and her life. They had no idea they'd just confessed their entire operation to the FBI. At 9 p.m. It all came together in the resort's private dining room. Golden Years Consulting had arranged what they called a celebration dinner for their new client acquisition. What they had actually arranged was the night their entire empire collapsed. The attendees included everyone who had played a part in planning my fake murder. Dr. Morrison, David Chen, Dr. Rebecca Chen, and 3 other so-called professionals who specialized in different branches of elder exploitation. And sitting at the head of the table, looking smug and self-assured, was my son, Brandon. Eleanor, Brandon said smoothly as I entered the room. Rebecca tells me you're interested in our family consultation services. I looked straight into his eyes, the same brown eyes I had stared into when he was a newborn. When I held him against my chest, rocked him to sleep, and whispered promises that I would always protect him. Now those same eyes were sizing me up as prey. Mr. Harrison, I said pleasantly, I understand you recently helped your mother with some difficult decisions. Unfortunately, yes, he said without a hint of shame. My mother was suffering from severe dementia, and the family had to make some hard choices about her care. How sad, I said. Is she doing well now? Brandon's expression softened into a carefully rehearsed sadness. Actually, she passed away last month. The stress of her condition was just too much for her system. The room went stone silent. Even the conspirators looked shocked. Brandon was announcing my death to a room full of people who thought I was someone else entirely. I'm so sorry for your loss, I said softly. It must be devastating to lose a mother. It was a blessing, really, he replied. She'd been suffering for so long. That was the moment I decided the charade was over. Brandon, I said clearly, my voice cutting through the tension in the room. That's a fascinating story, especially since your mother is sitting right here. I reached up and pulled off the gray wig of my Eleanor Blackwood disguise. Underneath, my own silver hair fell into place, perfectly styled. "Hello, son." Brandon's face turned the color of ash. Dr. Morrison dropped his wine glass. David Chen's eyes darted toward the exits. "Let me introduce myself properly," I said, standing tall. "I'm Margaret Harrison. Brandon's very much alive mother, the woman whose murder all of you have been planning." Agent Cooper's voice boomed through the room's hidden speakers. "This is the FBI. The building is surrounded. Nobody move." Chaos exploded instantly. David Chen sprinted toward the door and slammed straight into Agent Martinez. Dr. Morrison babbled about a misunderstanding. Dr. Rebecca. Chen started screaming about entrapment, but Brandon just stared at me, shock, rage, and somehow an odd glimmer of respect. "How long have you known?" he asked quietly. "That you were trying to have me killed?" "Since Spain." "That you were part of this larger operation?" "Yesterday." "That you told them I was dead?" About 5 minutes ago, Agent Cooper and her team stormed into the room. Badges out, handcuffs ready. "Brandon Harrison," she said formally. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, fraud, and violation of federal racketeering statutes." As they cuffed him, he looked at me one last time. "You know, Mom, I always underestimated you." "Yes," I said, my heart both breaking and hardening at once. "That was your biggest mistake." The next hour was a blur of arrests, interviews, and stunned retreat attendees. The other widows trembled with relief when they learned how close they'd come to suffering the same fate. Shauna Morrison threw her arms around me, tears streaming down her face. "You saved our lives," she whispered. 6 months later, I sat in a federal courtroom as Brandon was sentenced to 25 years for his role in what prosecutors called the most sophisticated elder abuse conspiracy in American history. Amber got 15 years, Dr. Morrison received 20. The entire Golden Years consulting network was dismantled. Its assets ceased to compensate victims, but the real victory wasn't in the prison sentences. It wasn't in the money recovered. It was sitting in my own living room again, finally feeling safe knowing that I hadn't just survived my own son's betrayal. I had helped make sure these people could never destroy another family. I had started this story as a victim, a confused widow manipulated by the people she should have been able to trust, but I ended it as something else entirely. I became a woman who fought back. A woman who refused to disappear. A woman who turned her family's cruelty into justice for others. My phone rang. It was Agent Cooper. "Margaret, we just got word from Spain. The Serenity Wellness Center has been shut down. Authorities are investigating connections to similar operations across Europe." I smiled and looked out at my garden, the roses I'd planted myself, blooming in the soft afternoon light. Justice, at last, was taking root. A tangible reminder that some things grow stronger after surviving difficult seasons. "Agent Cooper, that's wonderful news," I said, my voice filled with relief. "There's something else," she continued. "The Victims' Compensation Fund has been approved. Between that and the civil settlements, you're looking at receiving approximately $8 million. $8 million? I whispered, stunned. More money than I'd ever imagined having. But even more than that, it was justice. Proof that my fight had meant something. "What will you do now?" Agent Cooper asked. I looked around my home, the house I'd nearly lost, now filled with my own choices, my own memories, my own future. "I think I'll travel," I said. "There are places I've always wanted to see but never had the chance. And who knows, maybe I'll write a book about everything that happened. Other people should know that it's never too late to fight back." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my own space, truly alone for the first time in decades. Not lonely, alone by choice. In control of my own life, answerable to no one but myself. My children had tried to erase me from my own story. Instead, they'd helped me discover exactly how strong I really was. And that discovery, knowing I could survive, fight back, and reclaim my life, was worth more than all the money in the world. Outside my window, my roses were blooming beautifully.